Welcome to What's My What's Next. This is how we're starting to figure out how do we find our way forward in incredible uncertainty in a year that's turned inside, outside, upside, downside, and how do we figure out what actions to take? Where do we go moving from here? And today, I've got a very special guest. One of the things that a lot of people turn to, we've already talked about intuition in this. People sometimes turn to intuitives, but another thing that some people turn to is astrology. And it's my pleasure to have a wonderful friend who's one of the, I mean, she's one of the most accomplished astrologers I know. She's booked, I think, years in advance. She's now an author as well. We'll probably touch on that as well. Please help me welcome Deborah Young.
Hi, Ravi.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
A little,
Loaded.
loaded question.
What's that? Loaded question.
Loaded question.
Yeah. It's complicated these days.
It is, and we'll be getting into that. The other thing I should mention, if you are watching this live, you can put any questions, any insights, any comments you have into the comments, either on Facebook or YouTube Live, and I can bring those into the conversation. So if you have specific questions, please drop them in. Now, Deborah, perhaps we can start off with, what does astrology offer? Because there's a lot of perception. Some people think it's very dictatorial. It says this is what you do, thou shalt, and all the way to it's just talking about influences that you can be aware of. What is your understanding of what astrology brings to the table to help us find our way forward?
It's kind of a little bit of both in a way. Certain people will do very soul-directed work, and that can seem very deterministic. Others, there's more, kind of adaptability or, that kind of thing. We have the modalities and the elements. And for example, people that are born under Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, they're the adaptable ones. They're the ones that can adapt to this and adapt to that. We have the initiators or the creators, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And then we have the stick-to-its, the Taurus, the Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Typically in our chart, we have a little bit of both there. I'm an Aquarius, and I'm one of the stick to it, but because I'm the month, day, year, time I'm born, I have an Aries rising. And I have Capricorn on my house of career, which tells me I'm an initiator as well. I always need to be, kind of biting off more than I can chew and chewing it. That's kind of my way. But it's so there's different areas of your chart that let you know or inform you. What are your what are your vocational wants? I hate that idea that you have to do this and you kind of hunker down like a donkey and do it for the next 40 years. It's like, what are your vocational wants? Some of us want certain things, others want other things. And we have to play to those strengths and play into those strengths, as well as the world moving forward. You can adapt to all these, seismic changes.
Far more than your sun signs and what appears in the old days in the newspaper, I suppose, on whatever sites you go to, the little paragraphs and such.
It's much more delightfully complex than that, for sure. What do you need for your financial? What do you need for your resources? I've seen some people, especially in the last year or two, mostly millennials, that they're okay not making the big bucks. They want more playtime. They want more time to explore other areas of their life. So they may not be so career driven, or at least not money or resource driven like a lot of the previous generations. Good for you. And I've seen some younger people who are they're going to be doing something that we don't know yet, which I just love looking at that. They still have their vocational needs. Do I need something that is structured? Do I need something where I'm microed, or I need to be a leader, or do I need to offer some kind of service to other people? Those kind of what I would call non-negotiables are still there, but what they're going to be doing, how they're going to be presenting that, hasn't been created yet. It will be created in the next 5 years.
Now, you talking about yours, about where, your house, the houses, and can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people may not be clear on how that's different.
Yeah, and we all have 12 houses, and each house, is kind of a kingdom or queendom, and each one relates to a lot of inner world, outer world experiences and expressions. And it's so each one has a lot to say. The first house is about me and how I see the world and how the world may see me. The 10th house is the heaven of the chart, which is career, vocation. But the 6th house is the service that we are going to offer the world. And then the 2nd house is about money and resources, my attitude towards money and resources as well. And so we start from there, but the 12 houses are, and then certain planets will make them busier or more intense, or, they can be challenging or benefits or whatever. So they're a whole study in themselves. There's a shadow side to each of the houses as well. Of course, it's, yeah. I'm not sure what else to say.
Okay.
About that. Yeah.
So if people are now, this is a year, I actually think things were pretty uncertain before. Thought that they were structured. We thought we had more control than we did. But if people are in this uncertainty, not sure where to go, what are some of the insights that they can draw on from astrological analysis?
Well, you're a lot more resilient than what you think. You're a lot, we are. There is, I feel that we have, I guess you would say, control. Things are uncertain, no question about that. Mm-hmm. But if you are more familiar with, say, your birth chart, you play to those strengths. You play to the things that work for you. You don't get stuck in any kind of habitual pattern, but you play to the strength. You play to the strengths that work for you. I have somebody that I've been trying to get to have him retire for a few years. Preaching the benefits, and it's a good thing for him. And finally, he's retiring this year. He's hanging up the hat, which I told him he would a year ago, and he just did not believe that he would be doing that. And he's kind of had enough,
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a generational factor as well that I kind of lightly alluded to in terms of calling them millennials. There's actually 2 generations with the millennials. So there's lots of hope there. We are in absolute historic period. Some of this goes back even certainly the 17th century. It goes back to that in terms of the magnitude of changes. We're going through a time where there's certain businesses that won't survive. That's just a hard and very painful fact. New businesses will rise, though, and we can look at astrology in terms, okay, what kind of businesses will work in the future? If we look further ahead.
Okay, so so what are some of the indicators in that, in terms of what type of businesses would seem to be more viable moving forward?
Well, one of them is one planet that speaks to that is Uranus. It is in Taurus now, has been since March 2019. So the signs were already there. And it means a lot of things in terms of Earth instability, our environment, and so forth. But Taurus also relates to our values, and that's a check-in a lot of people don't seem to take the time to do. Like, okay, what your work has to reflect your values moving forward. And Uranus also relates to big social changes as well. When it was in Aries rules me, we got the selfie stick, right? Big innovation, the selfie stick. Now in Taurus, we have to, okay, what are our values moving forward? What is it that we want to do? With Uranus and Taurus, look at stir the ashes this year. More people are working from home. What kind of a business, could you start that would cater to those that are working from home? There's all kinds of innovations to make from there. Also, anything that relates to earth healing. We're going to need all the healers on board, of course. That I think goes without saying. We need as many, genuine healers as we can get on deck, to, kind of guide us through these times and defragment, as I mentioned before, our psyche, our body. But it's, all the downloads that we're taking in. But basically it is, anything that's innovative for the earth, anything that's innovative in agriculture, anything that's innovative in food security, All those things are real hot points for the next number of years.
Now, we've spoken before about how you actually had a sense of something significant happening this year several years ago, correct? From this. And so there's a lot that's been happening astrologically speaking around this year. Can you speak to a bit of that, about what you have actually seen for years that presage this?
And people were keeping a wary eye on this. It has a mass karmic event, and you can read that and know that intellectually, but then for it to roll out and what that all means, is a of course a whole thing. And this event is dismantling a lot of the structures. And I remember giving a talk about this in the mid-90s, that would be going through this cycle of dismantling old structures, all kinds of different systems, corporate systems, government systems, social systems. And people thought this was great. And it is, at the end game, it is good. But again, now we're living through it, and I'm sure they're kind of, if they remember that talk, they're kind of like, what was I thinking that I thought this would be great? This is tough. It's not easy going through these big these epic, era, shifts in time. So that was one piece. It kind of culminated January 12th, and it'll be rolling out for the next until 2024. There's an interesting energy, or two interesting energies, that begin in December of this year. And if I can just speak to one of them is Jupiter, which is Jupiter wants to expand and grow and be bigger. It offers hope, it relates to our beliefs and so forth. Right now it's in Capricorn, which it just went in a more positive direction a few days ago, and will stay in that positive direction until June of 2021. But it doesn't work so well in the sign of Capricorn. It's hard for that energy to express itself in Capricorn. Right now we have what I would call prudent optimism moving forward. It changes into Aquarius in December, and that involves more the collective, more the global, and again, more the future. In December, we will start to see what steps we need to make moving forward. It'll be a really, really important time. About December 17th, December 19th, another energy moves in at that time as well, that we're in the last throes of this energy in another sign that I'll talk about. But it gives us a kind of a clarity about our future in a way. And it's going to be there till March 2023. So we gain more clarity about what we need to do, to build a better future, basically. So that begins in December, mid-December, December 17th, 19th, and moving on for a couple of years. We'll get more clarity what we need. It's also time too, in terms of, making real strides in terms of, okay, what can I do in terms of, what can I contribute in terms of, say, a business or some kind of initiative that will help the world moving forward. So, and it's a much more hopeful, I see 2021 as more hopeful.
So when you say that that's going to be December, mid-December, that actually is saying, that time of year is often when we start to build a vision for the year. So it sounds like this is going to be a very good year to say, where are we moving to from this year of caca?
Caca, right? And not to say 2021 is a walk through the flowery fields or anything at all. We have a lot to clean up, but building a vision for the future, it would be very much a very good title for 2021, with everything else still going on. We're in the last few months of Saturn being in Capricorn. Saturn is a hard planet. Saturn is your grumpy grandfather, your totally strict, cop that stops you and pulls you over, or teacher. And it's in its strongest sign, that it can be right now, till about December the 19th, I think. We've got a ways to go, and that gives us clarity about leadership. It's karmic. This is quite a karmic time, really. And I fully believe that we're all meant to be here. And each of our generations has something we can offer. We can have our days of feeling meaningless or without purpose or direction, but we're kind of cleaning up some old messes. And this year is cleaning up some old messes that have been building for centuries. So this is on us.
Can you say a bit more about that? Because I know we've talked about it, you and I, offline, in terms of all this stuff that's coming up, and particularly for a neighbor to the south in America, that there's a particular return, correct? That's driving some of this.
Oh yeah, and it wouldn't peak in the U.S. chart for I think 2022 before it really peaks there, before it returns to the exact spot it was when the country was born. Each country has its own birth chart based on the month, day, year, time, and place a document declaring nationhood was signed. And the U.S. is July 4th, 1776 at 5 p.m. Philadelphia. So it has this energy returning, and it's playing out now. And for the most, a lot of it has to do with values. Again, it's a word, when I start using that, people start to kind of drift off or check their phones. And it's an incredibly important thing. Values inform who we choose in a relationship, our friendships, and even the neighborhoods we live in, communities we make or connect with. So a lot of it has to do with really their values. Who are they as a country? And there's an energy, just to add a little salt to the wound of 2020. Mars, moves through each sign, spending 8 to 10 weeks. That's a typical motion, but it's retrograde. And I'll give you some, dates to be alert to. And it's going through the very foundation of the U.S. chart for an extended period of time. I think till January 2nd of the U.S. chart. Altogether, it's in Aries till January 6th. That moved in June 27th. So that is an awfully long time for that energy to be in that sign. Mars is again in its most strongest sign. So we have all these, this kind of, chess moves, if you like. Saturn's in its most powerful place. Mars is in its most powerful place, and so on and so on. So but it's moving through, it rules fire and accidents and conflict. It also rules passion, motivation, and it's going through the very foundation of the U.S. chart. So there's a lot going on.
So when you're saying about values, I mean, that's absolutely what we're seeing at play there. That's the conflict that's going on, the polarization. Right. And it's where both sides really don't seem to even be listening to each other. They're just attacking because they're feeling themselves attacked.
Right. And the system or what began or birthed the U.S. is no longer viable on both sides. We're seeing kind of the worst of one side, but we're seeing really it's both systems don't work. The Canada won't go through that for about 100 years or so. Hopefully, I'll be reborn in another country at that point.
So this is really a defining time for, and it really does feel like that for the United States.
Incredibly defined. And there's, the inner planets are the ones that we feel most days. They move pretty quickly. That includes the planet Mars. Normally it moves faster than this. It's going to wear and tear on each of us individually. It already has been, for sure. But then the outer planets, they're the big game changers, no question about that. So to add to all these big game changing energies that the U.S. is going through, there is, we have that Mars, which is kind of again adding salt to the wound. So that's going to be, and even election day, November 3rd, there's pretty big things going on that day, of course.
Right. And I don't know how significant a thing it is, but, people have talked about how Halloween, we're having a full moon, which is right before that.
Well, I'll tell you a little thing. We have 2 full moons in October. It's the moon is full every 28 days, just like clockwork. It's the moon will be full, I think, October 1 and then October 31st, October 1, October 2nd, something like that. So people, you will see a lot of hype on the internet about, 2 full moons, 1 month. And it's simply, every few years we will have 2 full moons in 1 month. The second full moon is called the blue moon. So on
Right.
Halloween, that moon is the blue moon. It doesn't really mean anything other than, when the sun is in Scorpio and the full moon is in Taurus, which will be October 31st, those are pretty intense moons in general. So people may hang that on Halloween. I wouldn't put it to Halloween, but personally.
Okay. And what about today is a new moon? What's significance today? What new moons are beginnings and openings. So what should people be looking at starting to shift or open up now?
And I've certainly been, in the new moon in my office downstairs. I've been cleaning up a lot of old papers. It's not fun, but it's necessary to create kind of a cleaner environment, a more organized environment. That's our structure, cleaning up our structure. This particular new moon does make a really nice connection to the planet Saturn, where we gain, again, kind of a sobering, but not necessarily depressing, but kind of a sobering, okay, this is where we are right now. New moon Virgo, we are asked to take better care of our health, kind of clean up and organize and sort and get rid of and all of that. So it starts, it will be in a new moon cycle. We'll be moving into another phase in a few days' time when the moon goes into crescent. But right now we can what is meaningful work? And this new moon should also stir a desire to offer some public service as well. Of course, environment is top of everything, really. Without a house, what are we going to live in? There is another pattern that is quite annoying. It's the planet Mercury, which rules communication. It's going retrograde in October. I'd like to talk about that briefly because that's a whole thing. But it makes a difficult connection to the planet Jupiter. When those two clash the way they do in this particular new moon cycle, we're going to hear of people really exaggerating, all kinds of different things, claims, blah, blah, divulging secrets. It's not exactly very pleasant. Mercury is going to go retrograde. We'll be entering a pre-shadow phase of the Mercury retrograde, September 23rd. So there's a lot of snafus with communication. That's kind of normal. We get this is the last one this year, 2020. This is the last Mercury retrograde of 2020. We're coming up to it. It goes direct retrograde October 13th. And then November 3rd, which is the U.S. election date, it's what we call station directs or stations direct. And those are usually pretty intense days. We'll see October 13th being a pretty intense day, November 3rd being a really intense day in terms of news cycles. So,
oh joy.
Yeah. But, this energy, the same as the Mars retrograde right now, we're so used to moving forward. I do this, I move forward, I do that, I move forward. And when I, kind of alluded to this year being, loaded karmically speaking, it is about reviewing, it's about, it can be a highly creative time too. Mercury retrogrades can be very, very creative. We connect with people from the past. We, think of an idea we might have had 10 years ago. They're like, oh, maybe it's time for me to do something with that great idea 10 years ago. It's not a time to take action, but kind of review action. And where do I want to put my passion? That's one of the key themes and lessons of this particular Mars retrograde is where do I want to put my precious time? That's meaningful for me and meaningful maybe for other people, but it's meaningful for me. Where do I want to put my precious time is a big, important lesson, I think, for everyone. Do I want to hang out with friends? Do I want to sleep? Where do I want to put my time?
I really appreciate that because, the thing you hear a lot and it flies all over Facebook is everyone tends to blame all the things that go wrong in their life to Mercury retrograde. Right. And I appreciate what you're saying, that it's the time to reflect and review. Yeah. It's not, it's I love the meme that says, oh, Mercury's going direct. Now you have to be responsible for your life, right? Right.
And it's not, Mercury retrograde is time to slow our brains down a little bit. We're pretty speedy with our brains and everything else. You check before you share a post. You become a little bit slower in terms of your responses, your reactions. If they blow up, well, that's on you. You're being given notice. There's nothing to be afraid of. You're simply being given notice. It's time to slow down the brain, review, reflect. As I said, a very creative time. And ultimately, when you know astrology, you realize just how freaking responsible you are for your own life. And I feel that we're kind of held to really be responsible as astrologers, because these things are right in front of us and we have to kind of cooperate with what we're given. Yeah.
It's sort of flow with the tide rather than try to force.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving now into the last quarter of this year, and into 2021, what are some of the things that you are seeing that either can support us or that we need to be cautious of? Are there any key times, any key opportunities that you see moving forward?
Well, a few times with the Mars, Mars is going to make 3 different dates that Mars makes some really crunchy connections. One is September 29th, and normally this would be a connection that would kind of be there for a day or two, and yes, you're feeling it, and this and this and this are happening, but because of the nature of this, it's a little bit more heavy, I guess you would say. So starting September 29th, you could feel a certain level of frustration. If you take on a job or you take on something new, be prepared. There's going to be more work than what you may think. So again, you're being given notice. If you want to go ahead, go ahead. But whatever you're taking on is going to be a lot more work than what you would think. And also at that time, and this is something we can be compassionate with ourselves. It's people are going to be feeling tired. It's a lot energetically that we've been carrying and we've been working with. So people are going to feel tired. So if you have that, just that tired energy and that little resentment will come up. How well are you going to roll something out? Probably not so well. So things are going to seem harder. You would take an action that almost like feeds that energy. It's so September 29th for a couple of days, I would put it either side really. And then October 9th is a pretty challenging day in terms of more of a collective kind of anger and rage and more paranoia coming up. December 23rd, same thing, pretty much. It's a time not to necessarily push your actions moving forward. And certainly during a Mars retrograde, it wouldn't be the time to start some, brand new thing necessarily, right? But it's challenging you or inspiring you to, really take a good look and where do you want to put your precious energies moving forward? Where do you want to point your arrow?
Right.
With this value shift, some things that might have been meaningful, years ago will no longer seem maybe meaningful for you any longer. And there's a certain kind of grieving process that goes with that.
Right.
That thing that was important, that thing you were so passionate about is losing its meaning. So we can feel this meaninglessness, this sense of lack of purpose. It's okay to feel that way. A new purpose will arise, but that thing is no longer maybe the it thing for you.
So one thing is each of those dates you mentioned is just a few days around that. You just sort of, it may be more reflective rather than moving forward action.
The 29th, yes. Yeah.
And the other thing, when you said about the grieving, this is one thing I've noticed that this year with friends, with people I've been coaching, that particularly with lockdown, we were a busyness society. That we moved, and people did not have to face any emptiness they may have had or things that didn't fit. But with lockdown, they were forced to stop, and you can only Netflix for so long. And I think a lot of people have come to realize this year that there's stuff for me that just it doesn't fit anymore.
Nope. And so, there is a certain grieving, even if you are, well aware it doesn't work or it doesn't reflect these changing values. It's something that is we're going to see remarkable, shifts of values in individual people, friends and colleagues and so forth. Something that may have been really important for me to save money, maybe it isn't so important any longer, and so forth. So, but there is absolutely a grieving with that, and kind of an emptiness. We were. But it's so appropriate that this is happening now, because we are moving into a new world, and we would have just kept on with our busy, right? We would have just kept on with all the busy energy. It's been unpleasant to have to maybe sit and see some of these things, and we can acknowledge that. We don't have to give ourselves a hard time about it. And there'll be more times, the rest of this year that we'll see, we may hit some, downward kind of drafts in terms of, just a sense of meaninglessness. What's life? And that's okay.
So those are the Mars influences. Any other influences as we move towards the end of this year and into 2021?
Well, the Mars influence is more about actions moving forward, and it's I like the Mars retrograde kind of driving with the brakes on. You're not going to get too far. There's other energies, and but the big energies, the big kind of cosmic chess, it's everything's in play. We'll have highs, and we'll have maybe lows, but everything is in play now. The dates that I gave, like what is it, October 13th, November 3rd, those 2 days are really, really massive in terms of like news cycles, and then other dates as well. But yeah.
That's really interesting that it falls November 3rd. It's
right.
Going to be any insights or thoughts you have about what's happening down south with the election from the astrology?
It's interesting when Mercury was retrograde, which can be snafus and all kinds of communications and machinery and computers and whatnot. When George Bush was elected way back in, I was traveling through Morocco backpacking, and ran across this group of Americans who were just like pulling their hair out. And the Moroccans were like, "What's the big deal? You're in Morocco, enjoy." And of course that dragged on till all kinds of different things that Mercury was doing. I feel there's definitely going to be a pretty big fight. It'll be just post the full moon. Just a few days after the full moon, right. October 31st, November 3rd, there'll be a moon Gemini. So everyone will be pretty wired. I do feel that Biden will get in, but it's going to be really, really close, and it's going to be awfully, dirty in October.
Yeah. So how about for Canada? Any thoughts, any particular influences for Canada that's different? Because again, the birth chart is different for the two countries.
It is, and it's interesting because the U.S. has the planet Mars going through a totally different area. And that's just one factor. We're fighting with, we're kind of doing battle with others in the only way, in a Canadian way, of course. Not like other countries, but in the Canadian, I see it as being a little bit passive aggressive, to be honest. But it's Chrystia Freeland certainly laid down the law with the U.S. and I would love if she was their next prime minister, to be honest. But so that energy is going through till about mid-January. We're going to be mopping up a mess financially. I feel there's going to be a much bigger groundswell in terms of, again, our leaders acting on the values in terms of taking care of the earth. And I made the decision personally, I'm no longer interested in supporting somebody that is going to not do that, both locally and nationally. I won't support anybody that is not, willing to tear the Band-Aid off, so to speak. So it's, but fortunately, we have a protective energy that's moving through, the foundation of our country. And, I see next year being a year where there's a lot of rebuilding.
Okay. Now, this, just to mention again for viewers, if you're watching live and if you've got some questions, pop them into the comments. We may have time to address some of them. Another thing was when we last spoke and we did a live, it was just after the mass shooting in Nova Scotia, which was in lockdown, which was a pretty traumatic experience. And one of the things that you said is Nova Scotia's not done yet. And and then we lost a number of people through helicopter accident who lived here, the snowbird accident, the pilot, and such, and there were other things. Any thoughts here now? Are things easing off for us?
Things are easing off for us. It's so incredibly challenging to, people weren't able to necessarily express all the grief and horror at the mass shootings and the other tragedies. We had to again do it in this other way, and there's more to unpack with that. We can't afford to stuff it down. That's going to have a big impact on our mental health, our physical health, of course, as a result of that. There is, so there's a lot more to unpack. We've got a lot of healing to do. But, for the most part, everything is there's a lot to unpack with the globally, locally. The South Node is in Sagittarius till December 2021. Bigotry, racism, all of that is going to remain hot for everybody and unavoidable either. If we take our eyes off it, there will be one event that'll make it very clear that, we have to move forward with this. We can't just, kind of ignore it or think it's going to go away. It is absolutely not going to go away. It's part of the big seismic shift that we're going through that is hundreds of years overdue. So, right. Yeah. And that another part of that energy that is pretty destructive. The other energy that we're to cultivate rather is about, community and actually being, develop what is the right community for me. The other destructive part of that South Node Sagittarius is thinking you know more than you do. We see a lot of amateur, immunity experts and so forth, which makes me kind of crazy, really. But it's so that's a very destructive energy, or even me thinking I know what racism really is about. I don't. Not living in Nova Scotia, I don't.
Okay, and again, moving from the racism, but when you talk about people think they know things, what is it that's what can you draw from astrology that's explaining this explosion in the conspiracy theories? We've chatted about that as well offline. I know you and I have.
Yeah,
and it's just,
I know. We can say the government brought this on themselves. We can say that. Back in I think it was late 80s, early 90s, we had a few energies going through Capricorn rule systems, in particular, like government systems. And, they were doing things at that time that were, not on the up and up. And they were having, they would create a policy and then just get certain scientists to come in and sign off on those policies. So there was a distrust or mistrust, rather, that was, building for years. So this was ripe for the taking. The other energy that moved in 2008 is there till 2024. This is all pretty intense about people's paranoia. And some of it is absolutely 100% paranoia. But you can see where everything kind of led to this moment. Some of it being on the government's fault in terms of not being clear or transparent. They cannot afford to do that any longer. And we have some energies now that no matter what they're doing, it's going to come to the surface. So, you better be on the up and up, basically.
Yeah. And that's what the studies that are showing, that both the Brexit vote and Trump getting in, really a big driver of that is both of them figured out how to get at these people that were disenfranchised, that they felt powerless.
A lot of them, and there was many examples, certainly predating the late 80s, but that's when it really started to make it out of hand, and especially when they knew different. If you don't know different, okay, but they knew differently. So yeah, they learned how to work that. And the Pluto energy is that, yes, the systems have to change. I think everyone can agree to that it's uncomfortable, it's going to be unpleasant, but there's better ahead.
Right.
The dark side or the shadow side of that is just absolute paranoia, about the government, and it's intense. It's super, super intense.
So I'd like to take it a little personally now to you, in terms of your stepping out with your new book. I'm curious from an astrological point of view, how you drew insights to say this is the time to work on this, this is the time to release, and what you've discovered in your journey as an author.
Well, in terms of release, it would have been better if I had maybe released next year. But this is a release now, and I may have another release. That's a little surprise in January 2021 that I'll keep under my hat till January 2021. But in terms of, locking down times that would work, I could be my own worst enemy at times, for sure. I wouldn't allow myself enough time to kind of release the things that I'd be carrying from, say, clients, and be creative and be in a space where I could do that. So it was a real journey. I could say, it was definitely a struggle at times in terms of finding the space and time. I had to block off time and oftentimes leave where I live and go away for a while, a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what have you discovered in your journey as an author? What new aspects of yourself, what new avenues have you discovered from doing the writing, from doing the publishing?
It was interesting in terms of the process. I didn't learn anything, I don't think, brand new, but it was certainly like anything new you take on, your neuroses really comes alive. The things that, yeah, I know I'm like this, but you kind of, you work with it anyways, right? Where when you're, writing, it's really right in your face, and you have to work with it in a very, very different way. A certain surrender that I had to just kind of surrender and just be and trust, just trust the process. Because this book was really downloaded by a number of different visions. And the book really aligns with what's happening now in a big way. It's unity and diversity, basically. And what would it take for people to unite? What would it take? So this book talks about that, at the end, or near the end. So I learned things about myself I never wanted to know. No, I'm just kidding. but all those kind of like so-called normal, yes, I know I'm like this, they got bigger, for sure.
Right. And you've got a launch coming up October 9th, is it?
October 6th. Interesting you said the 9th. The 6th is actually my father's birth date. The 9th was actually my mother's birthday. Okay. Yeah. So parents were Libras. Yeah.
Right. And so you can, both your websites, your astrological one and your Gabriel's Great Perhaps are there at the bottom. And I'm sure there's... Now, going forward, what would you say, what's your sense of what the theme, if you will, for 2021 will be? What theme is coming up for you?
Well, I think you used a few words: building new visions. Building new visions. Being open to sudden changes in what's important to you. Those things are going. We had this before, back in the 1930s, 1935 to 1942. This is not our first go around as a civilization at all, but. It's so you can imagine between 1935 and 1942, a lot of things shifted in terms of values, right? So this is on kind of a higher level because of the other factors, but be open to those things happening and trusting that there will be new visions that that will come.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes to mind for me is it's absolutely possible to build a vision in uncertainty, because when I do my corporate work, a lot of times I may be working with a manager or a team that is in an organization that has terrible leadership, doesn't know what they're doing. Right. And so what I coach them to do is I say, okay, you may not know the direction, but you know how you are operating in that uncertainty, that you collectively have the practices to ground yourself so you can adapt and such, that can be part of the vision.
Absolutely. And that brings me back to the book. I was at times, and any writer would, I'm sure, have the same story, completely lost, no direction. And I had to trust that I would just have to continue writing. And from that uncertainty, then a direction would appear. But yeah, no, it's we can create a lot during these times, really a lot during even the rest of this year. May not be a time to roll it out, but we can. A lot of things are coming up, and again, choosing what you want to do with the rest of your life, or what you perceive the rest of your life to be.
Right.
One thing that is again super clear, from mid-December rather, through to 2023, is our absolute obligation to each other as a human family. We have a karmic responsibility to each other. That's going to be very clear. Leadership will spring from that, our collective responsibility to each other, no matter where we are in the world. That's absolutely a theme. And how do we forge links and connections to better that?
Right.
Right.
Okay. And that's, and it's interesting what you say. We've spoken about this before. Like for me, I'm sensing a huge theme in the world, and for me personally, around surrender. And
Yeah.
if there's one word that's a mantra for my life, it's allow.
And there's another energy that is in a peak form. It has obviously a pretty big shadow side to it as well, but the enlightened aspect of it, it hasn't been around in about 164 years, and that's Neptune, which kind of gives us a view of heaven, the divine, inspired inspiration, and it's in its strongest sign as well. And it is about surrender and allowing, and that can be the most challenging thing for some people to do. I know I'm one of them. Just like, no, surrender this, allow, and trust. Trust in what? Trust me on this one. It's there for years yet. I think 2026 or something like that, or 2025.
So it really is a time of surrender, surrender.
It really is. To get the Neptunian gold, if you like, absolutely surrender. And that time, I have nothing against Netflix. We certainly watch it. But it's, can't believe some of the bad programming out there. But anyways, but it's taking just that nothing time. That's when the good stuff comes in. When I would be writing, and get myself into a plot knot, a walk in the woods, I'd come back and be doing this. And again, I think any writer can talk to this as well, that at times the book was writing me. I just had to keep my fingers moving.
I get that totally.
Yeah.
But that's again another thing about trust. You allow that to happen.
Yeah. And it's intuitive. It's really where magic happens, both in, say, corporate Canada, corporate US, to create any kind of creative project. It is really where the magic happens. When in its most enlightened state, it truly is magic.
Okay. Now, thank you, Deborah. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I'll just ask again, if anyone's got questions, we've got a couple of minutes maybe that you can type them in. Truly appreciate you making the time for this. I really enjoy whenever we have the chance to chat.
I thank you for the invitation, Robbie. I really enjoy talking about all of this.
Thank you. And the final thing that I want to mention is one of the biggest challenges I've found, especially this year, is when we are overthinking the self-talk, the monkey mind that goes nonstop when you're up all night. So just wanted to mention one more time that starting today, you've actually got a chance to jump in on it. I'm launching a free Stop Self-Sabotage challenge that's about how do we get out of our heads. So if you want to join us, just pop into it's free. Go to self-sabotagecure.com. You can sign up. It's free 1 week challenge where I'm going to show you my Jedi mind tricks to shut off that self-talk. and then help you build that habit, give you some more resources over the next week to really ingrain all that so that we can, to me, it's critical in trusting. The more you live up here, the more you don't allow that to happen. So
that's such a valuable thing to be offering, Ravi. The planet Mercury rules the brain, and Mercury is a trickster.
yeah.
You know,
And it's so simple to step into presence once you know it.
Yeah.
And yet most people don't realize how simple it can be. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. We're starting off later today. You can absolutely join in. So please feel free, join us. It is going to be a load of fun.
No,
And let's see if we.
That's excellent. Again, that trickster brain. Anything that comes into your brain and that you credit your brain as being some grand inspiration, your brain is just a processing unit. That's all it is. We give it far too much credit.
Right.
You know, it's simply the filter where everything else comes. Well, yeah. Anyways, yeah. No, that's excellent. We get into a lot of trouble with our brains.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can put Mercury in its place.
Use it for intention, right?
Sorry.
Use it for what it's meant to do.
Absolutely.
It's a filter. Come on in. I need you right now. Now you can just go and take a seat. I'm going to walk in the woods.
And exactly. And that's what, most people think that they let that voice control them.
Yeah.
No, you're the one in control. You use the voice when you want, and you put it away when you don't.
Right.
So, yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. Thank you again, Deborah. Truly appreciate this.
It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, no, that's an excellent course. I'm glad that you're offering that. It's invaluable in these times.
Thank you. And we're going to have a bit of fun with it. So tomorrow I'll be back again with What's Next. We're going to dive. I've been going through the 5-step process to figuring out your way through uncertainty. Tomorrow we'll get into steps 4 and 5. So we will see you then. And hopefully we'll see you a little later on the Stop Self-Sabotage Challenge. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.